The first time I heard about the dark web was in a hushed conversation between two classmates. I was in the library, buried in my computer, trying to finish a project. Their whispered words, dark web, and auction caught my attention. I pretended to be engrossed in my work, but my ears were tuned to their conversation. "You wouldn't believe the stuff they auction off there," one of them said, a hint of excitement in his voice. "Isn't it dangerous?" the other asked, skepticism evident. I knew about the dark web, of course. Who didn't? It was that part of the internet where illegal activities thrived. But an auction, that was new to me. That night, as I lay in bed, curiosity gnawed at me. What were these auctions? And why were they discussed with such secrecy? I decided to take a peek, just a peek. I had always been tech-savvy, a trait I prided myself on, bypassing security measures, using a VPN, and ensuring my tracks were covered. I delved into the depths of the dark web. It was a maze, a labyrinth of links, each more obscure than the last. But after what felt like hours, I stumbled upon a site that sent chills down my spine. Red Auction Room, where your darkest desires come to life, the tagline read. The site was advertising a live auction, set to take place at midnight. A countdown timer ticked away, adding to the suspense. My heart raced. I knew I was treading dangerous waters, but the allure was too strong. I bookmarked the page, promising myself I'd log in just to see what it was about. As midnight approached, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. What was I about to witness? Was it just a hoax, or was there some truth to the whispered tales? I logged in. The screen was black, with only the chilling tagline and the countdown timer, which now read 0, 1 minute to go. I waited, my breath held, my fingers tapping nervously on the keyboard. The forbidden curiosity had ensnared me, and there was no turning back. The moment the clock hit midnight, the screen transitioned from black to a dimly lit room. The ambiance was eerie, with a single spotlight illuminating a metal chair in the center. Tied to the chair was a young man, his eyes wide with terror, his body trembling uncontrollably. A chat box appeared on the right side of the screen, and I could see usernames placing their bids. But these weren't bids for the man. They were bids for the tortures he would endure. The higher the bid, the more gruesome the act. $500 for waterboarding, one user typed. $750 for electric shocks, another chimed in. The numbers kept rising, and with each bid, the acts became more horrifying. I felt sick to my stomach, but a morbid curiosity kept me glued to the screen. A voice, distorted to mask its identity, announced, "The winning bid is $5,000 for amputation." My heart raced. This couldn't be real. It had to be some sick joke or a staged act. But the terror in the young man's eyes told a different story. A masked figure stepped into the spotlight, holding a rusty saw. The man's muffled screams filled the room as the figure approached him. I wanted to close the tab, to shut down my computer, to pretend I'd never seen any of this. But I was paralyzed, unable to tear my eyes away from the unfolding horror. The chat box was filled with cheers and encouragement, with users egging on the masked figure, treating the entire ordeal as some twisted form of entertainment. As the saw touched the man's skin, his screams became more desperate, more agonizing. Tears streamed down my face as I watched, helpless, knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. When it was over, the screen went black, and the distorted voice returned. Thank you for joining tonight's auction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, the next auction is just a week away. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the star. I finally managed to close the tab, my hand shaking, my mind racing. What had I just witnessed? Was it real or was it some elaborate hoax? Either way, I knew I had ventured into a part of the internet I should have stayed away from. That night, I barely slept, haunted by the images I'd seen and the realization that such depravity existed in the world. I vowed never to return to the dark web. But the damage was done. The red auction room had left an indelible mark on my soul, a chilling reminder of the depths of human cruelty. The auctions continued, each more horrifying than the last. I tried to convince myself that it was all a sick joke, that the people on the screen were actors, and the tortures were staged. But deep down, I knew the truth. The screams, the pain, the raw terror. It was all too real. I was about to close the browser, to try and forget everything I'd seen, when the host's voice, dripping with malevolence, echoed through my speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special item up for bid tonight. The screen transitioned to a live feed of a room. My room. I stared in horror as the camera focused on me, sitting at my computer, my face pale and eyes wide with terror. The chat box exploded with comments. Who's the newbie? Looks fresh. How much for her? The bids started pouring in, each one more chilling than the last. $10,000 to see her scream. $15,000 for a home invasion. $20,000 to watch her last moments. I was paralyzed with fear, my mind racing. How had they found me? How were they broadcasting my room? I had to get out, to escape before they came for me. In a panic, I yanked the power cord from my computer, plunging the room into darkness. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. But before I could speak, a text message appeared on my screen. Did you really think you could escape so easily? We're watching you, Lena. I dropped the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. Every creak, every rustle, every shadow seemed to taunt me, reminding me that I was being watched, that I was no longer safe. I barricaded myself in my room, praying that the police would arrive in time. But as the minutes turned to hours, and the silence grew more oppressive, I realized the horrifying truth. The red auction room wasn't just a place of torture and death. It was a trap, and I had walked right into it. The morning sun streamed through the gaps in my curtains, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread that had settled in my bones. I hadn't slept a wink, every little noise sending my heart racing, convinced that they were coming for me. I cautiously approached my computer, half expecting it to spring to life on its own. But it remained inert, a silent testament to the horrors I'd witnessed. I decided to check my emails, hoping for some semblance of normalcy. But what I found was anything but. An anonymous email sat at the top of my inbox. The subject read, "A gift for our newest member." With trembling hands, I clicked on it. A video file began to autoplay. It was footage from the auction, zooming in on my horrified face as I realized I was being watched. The clip ended with the chilling words, "You might have logged out, but the game has just begun." I felt sick. They had access to my personal information, my email, probably even my home address. I was a pawn in their twisted game, and there was no escape. Days turned into weeks. I became a shell of my former self, jumping at shadows, avoiding any form of digital communication. I even went as far as to sell my computer, convinced that it was the source of all my troubles. But the torment didn't end. Every few days, a new anonymous email would arrive, each more menacing than the last. Photos of me taken from a distance, videos of my daily routine, messages reminding me that I was being watched. The world outside became a blur. I confined myself to my apartment, too terrified to step outside. Friends and family grew concerned, but I pushed them away, convinced that any contact with the outside world would put them in danger. One evening, as I sat in the dark, a knock echoed through the silence. I froze, every fiber of my being screaming at me to hide. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. And then a voice cold and emotionless. "We know you're in there, Lena.